I swear I don't know who the father is.
I'm paying you to carry my grandchildren. Tell me who he is.
You're the one who artificially impregnated me. Shouldn't you know who the father is?
Miss Sinclair, this is an operating room. I'm gonna have to ask you to leave.
I'm not leaving until I get answers. Do not lie to me, Jenny. Who is the father?
Miss Sinclair, she's delivering. Please step back. Okay, Jenny, time to push.
Upon seeing the baby, Jenny felt a warmth and love she couldn't ever imagine.
No, stop!
This boy is a Sinclair. I'm not going to let you put your dirty hands on him.
Please, my baby, someone do something! Don't let her take my baby!
Second one's coming. Okay, Jenny, I need you to take a deep breath and push.
Oh my God, it hurts so much!
I know, you gotta breathe through the pain. Push. Oh, a beautiful baby girl. Okay, Jenny, one more time. Yo, push. Oh, it's a boy.
They were the most beautiful little babies she had ever seen. But Jenny didn't trust the Sinclairs. She suspected their devious plans for her weren't finished.
Jenny. Oh, Jenny. You need to take those two and run.
I can't leave my firstborn.
It's too late. Aster already left with him. You need to get out of here before she comes back for these two.
And just like that, Jenny changed her identity. She was now Quinn Murphy, mother of two. Jenny left the country, determined to protect her babies. She worked hard to provide for them, but it wasn't enough. So she went back to college. She was always the bright one and graduated early with honors. But Jenny still felt incomplete. The thought of her firstborn's well-being haunted her day and night.
Don't let her take my baby!
But now, Jenny was back in town with a new identity and a new job.
Why are we here, Mommy?
You guys were born in this city. We're here to find your lost brother. Jenny! I'm so happy to see you, Miss Simpson.
Miss Nora Simpson had been a loyal part of the Monroe family since Jenny was a child. Even when the Monroe business fell apart and Jenny's fiancé left her, Miss Simpson stayed by her side.
Jenny! Sammy!
Mommy, is that you?
Jenny was geeky and unimpressive, someone who would get easily lost in the crowd. But Quinn Murphy was the opposite. She radiated confidence.
Mommy, can we go to the zoo?
I promise I'll take you to the zoo. But first, Mommy has to go meet with her new boss. Keep an eye on Denny's jacket. He loses everything.
Oh, no problem. Good luck today. I'll have a homemade feast for you when you get home.
Jenny was joining the Roosevelt Hospital as a neurosurgeon, the same hospital where she gave birth 6 years ago.
Quinn Murphy. Welcome to Roosevelt's Neurology Department. I'm Dean Crawford, head of the surgical department and your new lead.
Excited to be on board.
I have to ask, with a resume like yours, why Roosevelt? Why not go to the best of the best? Ms. Murphy?
Unfinished business, I guess.
Dr. Crawford to surgery. I repeat, Dr. Crawford to surgery.
Duty calls. We'll continue this later, I promise. Meanwhile, take a look around, make yourself comfortable, and I'll see you in the morning, bright and early.
Jenny had left a lucrative position at the National Institute for Medical Research in London to return home. She was determined to find her firstborn.
I will not let you put your dirty hands on him!
Don't let her take my baby!
Jenny wondered if her child was even alive. The thought weighed heavily on her heart.
Oh, sorry. You all right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Denny, what? Did you follow me here?
Who's Denny? I'm not Denny.
Jake, where are you?
Quit playing games and come out right now!
Please, don't let him take me.
Where are you, Jake?
What do you mean my son was kidnapped from the hospital?
Mr. Smith, I can explain.
You can't explain shit! You had one job, to look after Jake. What am I gonna tell his mother?
He went to the restroom during his medical checkup and he just disappeared.
Review the security footage. And find my son. I'm on my way right now.
Yes, sir, I'm on it.
Find Jake, or I won't just fire you. I will kill you myself! Ah!
We're just gonna eat, then we'll take you back, okay?
They don't let me eat burgers at home.
Jenny felt a strange tug of curiosity and hope, struck by the uncanny resemblance between Jake and Denny. Could this boy be her firstborn?
Why did you run away like that? It's not safe to go with strangers.
You're not dangerous, are you?
No, Jake, I'm not dangerous. I just want to help.
I wish you were my mom.
Where is your mom?
Step away from the child.
Officers, this is all just a big misunderstanding. All I did was take the kid out for a meal.
Save your explanations for the station. You're under arrest for child abduction.
Get this woman out of my sight.
No, please don't take her away.
Let's go.
She's my mom.
What have I told you about talking to strangers? And why were you calling that crazy woman your mom? Beatrice is your mother, and you know that.
She hates me. She's only nice when you're around.
What's gotten into you, bud? Hi, Beatrice. Your son's having a rough day. I think it's best if you don't come around today. I'll call you later.
Dad, that lady was really nice today. Could you make the police let her go?
If you promise to behave and take your medications, I'll let her go.
I promise.
Lance, call the chief and ask him to drop the charges.
You got it, boss.
How could Jake have established such a bond with a stranger so swiftly?
Hey, are you all right? Was everything okay at the hospital? Come here.
Jenny recounted her stressful day to Miss Simpson, running into Jake, the child of the powerful Fred Smith, with an uncanny resemblance to her own son Denny, being arrested for child abduction, then suddenly being released. Miss Simpson could tell that Jenny was afraid.
Dr. Murphy to surgery. I repeat, Dr. Murphy to surgery.
An overwhelming sense of fear gripped her like a vice, as if Miss Sinclair wanted her and her children dead.
We need to talk.
Dr. Crawford, I can explain. It's all just a big mix-up.
That's all been taken care of. Mr. Smith didn't know you were a doctor in this hospital. In fact, you're going to be treating Jake from now on. He'll be here any moment.
What is Jake being treated for?
He's been coming to this hospital for behavioral issues and temper tantrums, and he's prone to violent outbursts.
You're here. I was worried I would never see you again.
Hi, sweetie.
Mr. Smith, allow me to introduce our new neurosurgeon, Dr. Quinn Murphy.
Fred felt something as he shook hands with her, but he couldn't quite grasp what it was until finally it hit him. He had met Quinn before. Does Fred know more than he was letting on? Will the truth come out about Jenny's past?
I apologize for the misunderstanding. My assistant thought you were some random lunatic and not our new doctor.
Quite all right, Mr. Smith. Hop on up and we'll begin the exam.
We'll leave you to it then.
Will you take me to burgers after the exam?
We'll talk to your dad about it, but first I have to ask you a few questions, okay? So I read your chart, outburst, medications. Is something bothering you, Jake? Is everything okay at home?
I just get really mad because of my mom. She's not really my mom, and she's mean to me when no one's around. She hates me.
All right, Jake, I believe you. I'm gonna ask you an important question, and I want you to answer it honestly. Can you do that? Does your mother ever hurt you?
Jenny's heart broke upon hearing this. She knew what she had to do. She needed to immediately convene with Dr. Crawford to gauge whether the situation was serious enough to be reported to authorities.
I'll be right back. Can I speak to you in private?
Something wrong with my son?
I haven't done any neurological exams on the boy yet, but I just need to speak with Dr. Crawford.
You haven't even examined him yet, and you already need your boss's help? Doc, is she even competent enough to treat my son?
All right, calm down, Fred. I'm sure everything is...
I need to know. I do not trust just anybody with my son. Is he okay, Miss Murphy?
Quinn, it's okay. He's the father. What's going on?
Jake seems to be under significant stress. It seems to be something going on at home.
What are you accusing me of, Dr. Murphy? You think I'm torturing my own child?
No, not you. Your wife. I need Dr. Crawford to tell me how to proceed in light of this information. We are legally required to report all abuse to the authorities.
You're telling me you think my wife is abusive?
I only know what Jake told me.
This is outrageous. How dare this woman throw such allegations against my family? I will have your medical license revoked.
Don't you care about your son's well-being, Mr. Smith? I did you a favor by coming to Dr. Crawford. Maybe I should have just immediately reported you to the authorities.
I should have never dropped those charges against you. I'm taking my son home. Jake! What kind of outfit are you running here? How can my son go missing twice in 2 days? You were gonna pay for this.
Jenny thought of how much Jake looked like Denny, her son. Same age, same height, same hair. It hit her. Jake was her missing son, and he was being raised by this horrible man.
Fred, please, calm down. I'm sure he's around here somewhere. I'll alert the facility. We will find him.
Damn right you will, and get this woman out of my sight. I demand her to be fired.
Let's not be too hasty.
You need to do something. I will have this place on lockdown if my son isn't found in an hour.
I'm sorry, Quinn. I'm gonna have to suspend you, pending an investigation or until we find Jake.
This is wrong, and you know it, Dean.
I know, but Fred Smith is not just the president of RexCorp. He's our biggest donor and a senior member of the board. My hands are tied.
So you just bow down to him every time he decides to throw a temper tantrum?
I am truly powerless here. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry.
Attention all staff. We have a code purple. Please be on the lookout for a lost child.
Miss Simpson?
Jenny, are you all right? I just heard there was an emergency at the hospital.
The boy, Jake, he's missing.
Again? Oh dear, I hope they find him.
I'm sure they will. Fred Smith is a powerful man. I don't know if Jake's safe with him.
What do you mean?
I'm his mother. I know I am. And he needs to be with me and his brother and his sister.
Calm down, Jenny. I'm outside with the children. I just rushed here as soon as I heard. I'll see you soon. Your mom's coming now. Sammy, where's Jenny?
Looking for Mom.
Jenny!
Jake! Can you stop running away? I'm gonna get in serious trouble. Let's get you home.
Jake knew he should set the record straight and stop Fred from taking the wrong boy home. But he had wanted to get away from his father for so long. This was his chance.
Jenny! Jenny! Jenny!
I'm not Jenny.
Come back to the car right away. You can't just wander off.
I'm not Jenny.
Thank you for coming, Miss Simpson. Were they behaved today?
For the most part.
But Jenny had no idea that her firstborn son, the one that was taken from her, was sitting in her car instead of the child she'd raised all these years. But what would happen to Denny now that he was under the care of that terrible man? And worse yet, what would Fred do when he found out who Jenny really was?
I'm sorry. I couldn't live with myself if anything happened to you. I love you more than anything in the world. You know that? Denny, with his wide eyes and feeling totally in over his head, just nodded. As Fred continued to address the little boy he thought was Jake. Son, are you really that afraid of your mother? He asked. No, said Denny, somewhat clueless. Quinn was a wonderful mother. Why would this man think anything else? Then what is it? You can tell me, continued Fred. I know you might have been afraid to tell me the truth. That's okay. You're not in trouble. He tousled the boy's hair lovingly and called his assistant, Lance, to have dinner ready for them when they made it back to the penthouse. Over in Quinn's family minivan, heading in the opposite direction, Jake Smith was having a similar experience. He'd snuck into this car, and now the nice doctor lady from yesterday was calling him Denny. So was this little girl, and an older woman up front driving. It was kind of funny. He wondered how long he could keep this joke going. How about some chicken nuggets for dinner? Said Quinn, as Nora drove them to their house. Wow, I've never had chicken nuggets in my whole life, thought Jake, thrilled with the possibility of trying something new that he'd never been allowed to have. Yay! Both children yelled enthusiastically. Quinn was so tired and spent from this crazy day that she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. Hadn't Denny been wearing a different outfit earlier? No, that didn't make any sense. Quinn sighed, laid her head back on the headrest, and closed her eyes momentarily, thinking of what to do about her job at the hospital. She wouldn't tell Nora or the children, at least not yet. She would try her hardest to get her job at Roosevelt Memorial Hospital back. Fred Smith wasn't going to stop her. However, across town at Fred Smith's penthouse, her son, Denny, was now seated in an ornate dining room at a very long table. People were all fussing over him and still calling him Jake. The man in the fancy suit sat at one end of the table, and a lady with a lot of makeup sat on the other end. I'm sure your mother has been worried about you today, said Fred, gesturing to the woman at the end of the table. That's not my mother, said Denny matter-of-factly. She is. Now, come on, reiterated Fred. No, she isn't. Jake, we've talked about how hurtful it is when you say these things about your mother. Denny exhaled and looked up into the large crystal chandelier with amazement as a chef placed a plate on the table in front of him. The boy looked down at his plate, confused. What's this? He asked. The woman at the table clenched her jaw. It's veal bolognese, said the chef gently. The boy started picking at it with his fork, curiously, and eyeing it with suspicion. Veal bologna? Asked Denny. That doesn't sound very yummy. The woman exhaled loudly, her frustration evident. Fred cleared his throat. Chef Julian, will you please take Jake into the kitchen and find him something else to eat? I'm sure this is delicious, but it's been a rough day for him. Certainly, sir, agreed Chef Julian and accompanied the boy to the kitchen. thinking privately about how nice it must be to be this rich and be able to have an array of dinner choices ready at a moment's notice. He ran away again, and now he's refusing to eat his dinner? Complained Beatrice. And he's still arguing that I'm not his mother. You need to check him in somewhere, Fred. He's getting worse. No thanks to you. Fred narrowed his eyes on his wife. I don't know what you're talking about, cooed Bernice, but I'm sure you will enlighten me. Do you know why he ran away this time? Boomed Fred. Because he's an incorrigible problem child with mental health problems? Said Bernice. No. I learned today that you have been hitting our son. Is that true? Oh, please. Even the Bible says if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. You may let him get away with turning his nose up at dinner and having Chef Julian cook him something new, but I certainly won't. You're turning the kid into a spoiled brat, Fred. That's why he acts like this. I had a leading neurologist say today that Jake's problem is psychological. His extreme distrust and fear of you are what's causing him to act out. And if you're hitting him, we never agreed to that. I believe what my son is saying, that he's scared. You believe him over your own wife, who carried him in her belly. You think I wouldn't know my own child? Said Beatrice, sounding wounded. If we're being completely honest, Beatrice, I took your word for it. I'd just seen you for Christmas, but almost right after, I went back overseas for the army. Then our truck was blown to bits by that roadside grenade. It's the last thing I remember about my time in Afghanistan. Do you have any idea what it was like for me? Being in a coma for 3 years after something like that? Well, neither do I. Because I was in a coma, Beatrice. And then I wake up, and surprise, I have a son? I've never questioned you about it, not once. But now, I have questions. Jake is right. You don't cuddle or kiss him or treat him like other moms treat their kids. You act like he's just some nuisance, an inconvenience. I can't believe what you're insinuating, said Beatrice. That's cutthroat, even for you, Fred. That's enough. Just stop, said Fred with an air of authority. Pack up your things, Beatrice. I'll have Max watch you to make sure you pack only your own belongings. You are to leave this penthouse immediately. You will never hit my child again. You'll be hearing from my lawyers. Fine. You'll be getting the bill, said Beatrice, standing up and tossing the chair aside with a crash. I always do, mumbled Fred, who had spent hundreds of thousands per year on spa treatments, clothes, plastic surgery, country club memberships, and more for this woman. I'll take you to the cleaners, said Beatrice. You can try, said Fred. But that will be awfully hard now that I have the chief surgeon from Roosevelt Memorial Hospital able to testify to the fact that you were abusing your son. You wouldn't, accused Beatrice. To protect my son? Of course I would. I would do anything for him. I'm his father, regardless of what any DNA test might say. And you know that I'll be asking for one. You son of a yelled Beatrice. I'm going to the Four Seasons, to the presidential suite, or whatever will cost you the most. Enjoy it while you can, sweetheart, said Fred nonchalantly as Beatrice stamped out of the room with indignation, shaking it off. Fred then noticed the boy, standing in the open kitchen doorway. How would he explain all this to him? I told you I don't need medicine. You can't make me, yelled the 6-year-old boy, running away afraid. While young Jake Smith had escaped the hospital and headed right into the Murphy family's minivan and was now masquerading as Denny Murphy, the identical brother he didn't even know about, Quinn's son, Denny, was now high up in a luxurious penthouse, being mistaken for Jake Smith and being asked to take Jake's medicine. The man wielding the pill bottle, Fred Smith. had taken him home, thinking he was Jake. And while Denny had fun with it for a while, taking limos to a fancy penthouse and eating dinner made by a professional chef, now Denny felt like he was in over his head, especially since Fred was now trying to make him take medicine. "Jake," began Jake's father, Fred Smith. "We've talked about this. The medicine will calm you down and help you go to sleep a little bit easier." "I don't need it. There's nothing wrong with me. You even told the mean lady the same thing before you sent her away." "That mean lady," answered Fred, "is your mother. I'm sorry you heard our argument. That's not fair to you. But this medicine was prescribed for you by a doctor." "My mother's a doctor," said Denny, telling the absolute truth about the life of Denny Murphy. "What? Your mother isn't a doctor, and she isn't here. I'm here. And I want you to feel better, so just take the medicine, okay?" sighed Fred, addressing the boy he thought was his son, Jake. Fred was weary. Why did parenthood have to be so difficult? Fred loved his son, but these kinds of refusals sure got tiresome. "Fine, I will," said Denny, sick of arguing too. He realized that he could either just take the medicine or be forced to, and he didn't want to be forced. He walked back to the bed and accepted the medicine. The pill scraped his throat as it went down, but he held his little dog finger puppet in his hand and drifted off to a contented sleep within minutes. On the other side of town, Jake Smith continued his escapades as Denny Murphy. He had the time of his life eating chicken nuggets for the first time, even if he was confused about this other family having such a small house and no resident chef. Didn't everyone have their own chef? He really liked Chef Julian. He liked going into the kitchen and hearing the old man hum to himself as he sharpened his knives, cut vegetables as fast as the wind, and flipped his pots and pans around in a flash. There was always something to see in Chef Julian's kitchen. Nora Simpson, the Murphys' nanny, didn't seem to know any kitchen tricks. She had simply removed a bag of chicken nuggets from the freezer and toasted them in a small toaster oven. Jake couldn't believe how peculiar this was. "Nanny," said Jake, "aren't you going to chop anything really fast with your kitchen knives or do any cool tricks with your frying pan?" Sammy Murphy, Denny's sister, laughed at this. "Isn't there anything for me to stir or taste?" Jake continued with disappointment. Began Nora, thrown by the boy calling her nanny instead of Nora. "No, I'm not going to flip frying pans around. That's not safe. I could drop them and hurt somebody or break the pan. Just eat your dinner, mister. You know we have an important day tomorrow. We're going to see about finding you and your sister a nice new school." "I liked our old school," said Sammy sadly. "I miss my friends. I miss the parks. I miss the red telephone boxes." "Aw, honey," said her mother, Dr. Quinn Murphy, who had just appeared in the doorway after changing out of her work clothes. "I know it's hard moving to a new place, but I promise you'll make new friends. We can go to Central Park and you'll see all kinds of exciting things that are way better than red telephone boxes." "Do you mean it?" asked the girl a little skeptically, warming Quinn's heart. "Absolutely," said Quinn. "And tomorrow, we are visiting a great new school to see how you like it. I know they have a dance studio and art classes, and maybe you can even learn a musical instrument. Would you like that?" "I want to play the drums," said Jake. "Too loud, sweetie. I think the neighbors would prefer it if you chose a different instrument. I know I certainly would. So, no drums, no trumpet, no bagpipes." "Aw," said Jake. Quinn started to tickle the boy, and he laughed. Soon, she was in a tickle fight with both children. "You're the best mom I ever had," said Jake as the laughter died down. "Why, thank you, honey. I love you too," Quinn replied, her heart swelling with love for her children. But momentarily thinking again about the boy at the hospital, Jake Smith, and the possibility of him somehow being her long-lost firstborn triplet. What would Denny and Sammy say if they knew they had a brother? Quinn forced her mind back to more important matters. Right. It's bath time, you two. You're first up, Denny, she said. The children grumbled but made their way upstairs as Nora cleaned up after dinner. Quinn started the water running and helped the children pick out clean pajamas. Jake liked Denny's pajamas better than his own. Back home, Jake's pajamas were matching sets and shiny material with cursive letters embroidered on them in gold. They were boring. These pajamas were blue, had footies and a big long zipper, and had pictures of dinosaurs all over them. Jake decided that whenever he got home, he would ask his dad for some pajamas with dinosaurs on them. They looked so comfortable. Jake couldn't wait to wear them. You know the drill, sonny boy, said Quinn, turning off the bath water. Clothes off and get in the tub. I'll be right back with your towel. I need to check that your sister is getting ready to jump in. Okay, Mom, Jake said, thinking about how comfortable it felt to call Quinn that. As Quinn left the room to make sure that Sammy was getting ready for the bath she'd be taking right after her brother, Quinn smiled at Jake and shut the door as he took his shirt off. Had Quinn stayed in the bathroom for just 5 seconds longer, she would have noticed the birthmark on Jake's lower back and known immediately that he was not Denny. Jake slipped into the warm water, wondering how much longer he could keep up this charade. In a downtown high-rise across town, Beatrice had checked into the most expensive suite at the Four Seasons Hotel. She was already lying back on a chase, a towel wrapped around her head, cream on her face, and cucumber slices covering both eyes. One technician was attending to her feet, while another one buffed her nails. Beatrice luxuriated in the comfort of the plush hotel bathrobe. She was finally going to be free of Fred and his obligations, and free of that little brat, Jake. The divorce would bring her as much money as she would ever need to live a comfortable life. And now, she could do whatever she wanted and see whoever she wanted. Beatrice sighed a contented sigh. However, her reverie was soon interrupted by the arrival of her mother, Cheryl. "You stupid, selfish, foolish girl," cried Cheryl as she loomed over her pampered daughter. "You need to go back to Fred, immediately." Beatrice just laughed. "He threw me out, Mother, and I'm glad. No more boring, stuffy social events, no more pretending to like that child. I'll get millions in the divorce. Everything I did, everything we worked for all these years, gone in an instant, because you couldn't be bothered to treat the child nicely," hissed Cheryl. "Oh, Mother," sighed Beatrice. "Your theatrics are tiring." "Beatrice, do you somehow not remember what's at stake here? What if Fred demands a DNA test?" "He already said he was going to demand one, but Jake was his son, no matter what the results say," Beatrice yawned. "That's when he thought the issue only related to his paternity. But what happens when he learns that Jake, well, that is more complicated altogether? What happens then?" "It hardly matters," answered Beatrice. "He loves that boy, dotes on him, spoils him even. That isn't going to change. Do you understand that the second he finds out about the child's genetics, he will want answers? And there will be an investigation. And you and I could both go to jail. Jail, Beatrice. Do you get that?" "I don't see how I would be the one going to jail," Beatrice said. "You're the one who stole him from the hospital. When your father died, I used the insurance money, all of it, to pay that wretch of a girl to carry those babies. But she changed her mind at the hospital. She wanted them after agreeing to hand them over to us. I had no choice. We had a plan in motion that couldn't be stopped," said Cheryl. "We both knew that the only way we would be set for life was to have that CEO's son wake up from his coma, see you, and be introduced to his son. And when he didn't remember you, I had all those photographs made. He believed you then. Pictures of you and him on dates. Pictures of a proposal that never happened. Well, He was certainly at the wedding, laughed Beatrice. It was in all the society pages. Cheryl continued. The man was in a coma for 3 years. He woke up groggy and we showed him things that weren't true, that we faked, and presented him with a boy and told him it was his son. He believed it. You were home free, Beatrice. He believed it. He believed it all. Cheryl eyed her daughter with contempt. I'd go down for kidnapping and fraud, and you down for fraud and for being an accessory to kidnapping. Do you think that isn't going to come out during a messy divorce? Think again. Beatrice rolled her eyes at Cheryl. I've been diverting funds for years at this point. Fred has so much money he wouldn't even notice. A little here, a little there. We'll be fine. And then the divorce ruling will leave us much more than fine. Beatrice scoffed, not worried at all about her mother's fears. Great. So we add embezzlement to the list too, hissed Cheryl. This just gets better and better. Did you not for 1 second spare any thought for the prenuptial agreement you signed before marrying Fred? The one his lawyers insisted on before he was allowed to get married. I haven't cheated on my husband, Mother. Beatrice pushed back. That will help, certainly, but I have Sid Feldman reading through the fine print. You may have ruined us, Beatrice, and all because you couldn't even fake being a good mother to that little boy. You could have just been nice. Would that have killed you? He's not a bad kid. Mother, he's so annoying. He's whiny, he's demanding, and he hates me. Beatrice? Began Cheryl. If you had any kind of maternal instinct, you'd recognize that children don't hate. They can't. They can get frustrated when they don't get what they want, sure. But they don't act out like Jake does unless there's something going on. What are you saying? Asked Beatrice. I'm saying that you trapped yourself in a vicious cycle. You started hitting the child. Then he acted out against you. Then you hit him for acting out. It goes around and around. How do you think that will play out when he's a teenager? I don't care, Mother. I'm out of there, remember? I won't have to be around him anymore. The standoff was cut short by Cheryl's phone, which rang to the tune of a Beach Boys song. Cheryl answered. Sydney, Cheryl said. Talk to me. Beatrice watched her mother's face widen with shock. Cheryl covered her mouth and flopped herself down on the chase next to the one Beatrice was sitting on. Beatrice waved away the manicure and pedicure technicians and tried in vain to overhear both sides of her mother's phone conversation. Oh my God, said Cheryl. Then that means... Cheryl's voice trailed off blankly as the attorney continued to deliver his take on what Fred and Beatrice's prenuptial agreement had in store. Okay, thank you. We'll be in touch. Cheryl hung up the phone, and her hand fell limply at her side as she brought her other hand up to her eyes. What? Beatrice asked. What did he say? Beatrice, began Cheryl, you must find a way to make up with Fred immediately. We have no choice. Do whatever you have to do. You have to get him back. I don't understand. What did the lawyer say? Asked Beatrice ominously. Cheryl's eyes brimmed with tears, and she took a moment before giving her daughter the news. You're penniless, Beatrice. Beatrice's stomach sank. Penniless? This has to be a mistake. There was one thing she knew for sure. She sure as hell wasn't going to stay penniless for long. She had to get to the bottom of this. Fast. And no one, least of all Fred Smith, was going to stand in her way. I will not be penniless. I was meant to be rich. Beatrice screamed at her mother, Cheryl, who was digesting the news they'd just heard from their lawyer. Well, then you've got to win Fred back. And you've got to win him back now, Cheryl snapped at Beatrice finally. Are you sure that lawyer knows what he's even talking about? Beatrice stomped around her penthouse room at the Four Seasons Hotel, a grand view of Central Park in front of her. Yes, Beatrice. You are in the wrong here, Beatrice, I'm afraid. Cheryl shrugged. We both are, Mother. If I go down, so do you. Beatrice may have conned Fred after he woke up from his 3-year coma. She may have convinced him that they were in love and that she was the mother to that spoiled, rotten child, Jake. But Cheryl had done all the planning. Cheryl probably knew who Jake's real father was, but Beatrice knew better than to ask any questions. Cheryl had even gotten that sad, pathetic woman to be the surrogate, so that Beatrice didn't have to go through the ordeal of pregnancy. For Beatrice's part, she'd just shown up at the hospital and done exactly what her mother told her. But Beatrice and Cheryl both loved being rich, and were not going to give that up, no matter what it took. Suddenly, Beatrice stood up and walked over to the telephone in her room and dialed down to the front desk. Hello? What are you doing, Beatrice? You're wasting precious time here, Cheryl snapped. But Beatrice just ignored her until she'd hung up the phone, satisfied. Beatrice had made Fred fall in love with her once. She could do it again. And she would look good doing it, all on Fred's dime. I'm getting Fred back, she announced, flopping back down on her plush king-sized bed. Meanwhile, across town, Fred was still working on controlling Jake, but in the course of the new day, he'd seen something of a shift in him. Jake had suddenly become obedient. It's time to take your meds, Jake, Fred, Jake's father, urged, expecting another fight like the one they'd had the day before. But Denny Murphy, who was pretending to be Jake Smith, just nodded and held out his hand, his beloved finger puppet on his finger. Fred smiled. He didn't know what happened to his son, but he liked this change in him. The medication must be working, Fred thought. Fred knew that keeping that useless Dr. Quinn away from his son had been a good idea. She deserved that suspension. Really, he should have had her fired. But then, Fred stopped himself. Why did he keep thinking about this Dr. Quinn Murphy? Meanwhile, Denny put the pill in his mouth. Fred handed him the glass of water. Denny took a sip. Fred patted his head. Good job. Fred patted his son's head. The meds make you feel better, don't they? Yeah, I guess, Denny agreed. However, just then, Fred's phone rang with a work call, and he turned away from Denny to answer. Denny swiftly took the pill off his tongue and hid it in the finger puppet, just in time as Fred soon bounced back into the room, announcing, All right, Jake, come along now, it's time to get ready for school. What school do I go to again? Denny asked earnestly. But Fred just laughed and shook his head. Very funny. Come on now, get dressed. Your teacher is waiting for you. But seriously, what school do I go to? Denny asked again. You're homeschooled, Jake. You know that. But what about friends? Like friends at school? Fred shook his head. Maybe those meds weren't working after all. Fred couldn't believe this. Jake had been homeschooled for his entire childhood. He'd never had any complaints. Look, I don't have time for this, Jake. I need to get to work. The teacher's waiting for you on the 3rd floor. Hurry along now. Unsure what else to do, Denny wandered his way towards the 3rd floor, all the while whispering to himself, Homeschool? What does homeschool mean? As Denny grappled with the strange world of the ultra-rich, Jake, who had taken on Denny Murphy's life, was excited to begin his first day of actual school. He'd never had classmates before. His father had never allowed Jake to attend real school. Now, Jake couldn't wait to make new friends. It was all he would talk about. Are we going soon? I just can't wait to get to school. Real school, Jake told Quinn, Denny's mother, excitedly. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Quinn smiled, holding Jake and Sammy's hands as they crossed Central Park to their new school. The school itself was a towering building where half a dozen or so kids in uniform were still outside, kissing goodbye to their parents and about to start their day. Jake stared at the school in wonder. It was massive and nothing like the dark single room with a supersized chalkboard that he took all his classes in back home. I want to do everything. Musicals, basketball, track, art club, science club. Jake prattled on. You hate science, Sammy interrupted. No, I don't. I love it, Jake insisted. Since when? Sammy glared at her brother. Why was Denny acting so weird? He was never this excited about school back in London. I don't know. You're a liar, Sammy whispered to Jake. Am not. Are too. Sammy kicked Jake's leg behind Quinn's back. Ow! Jake kicked back. Sammy stuck out her tongue at him. Quinn took a deep breath and separated the two children. She loved her children more than anything. But right now, they were testing her last nerve. Just a few more days and she'd be back at work after this ridiculous suspension. How dare that annoying and stuck-up Fred Smith accuse her of malpractice? As if she would ever hurt a child. He was the one letting the child's mother hurt his own son. She tried to shake off the memory of Fred Smith, but she hadn't been able to keep him or his son Jake from her mind for more than a few minutes over the past few days. She really hoped that Jake was doing okay. She believed him, even if his father did not. Leave your brother alone, Sammy. He's just excited, Quinn instructed, trying to put an end to the squabbling. Sammy crossed her arms and walked ahead. Be nice to your sister, Denny. Starting at a new school is hard, Quinn whispered to Jake. Yes, Mother, Jake murmured to Quinn. He ran to Sammy and put an arm around his sister. Sammy pretended to be mad, but Jake was too cute to ignore. Come on, Sammy, don't be mad at me, please. Jake pulled at her arm until Sammy dropped her arms. You're so annoying, Sammy shoved Jake. Yeah, but I'm your big brother, so you have to love me. Jake stuck out his tongue at her. Sammy stuck out her tongue too, but she smiled at Jake. The kids, however, failed to notice that they were about to run into Beatrice and Cheryl, loaded down with shopping bags. Hey, watch it, kids! Beatrice snarled at them. Cheryl turned up her nose at the children. How rude. Kids, watch where you're going, Quinn yelled. Apologize to the nice ladies now. We're sorry, we weren't paying attention. Jake turned toward Beatrice. But Sammy pulled him away before he got a good look at her face. Sorry. Come on, Denny, the bell is going off. Classes are about to start. As the kids ran on ahead, the snippet of Jake's voice she'd heard stopped Beatrice in her tracks. She tried to get a better look at him, but the kids were rushing to school. Sorry about them. They're just excited, Quinn explained to Beatrice before walking away. Beatrice shook her head. I'm losing my mind. I can't even shop without that kid haunting me. Finally, Beatrice and her mother, Cheryl, made it to their destination. A sky-high tower block not far from the park, where the women were meeting their lawyer, Sid Feldman. Tell us what was so urgent on the phone that we needed to rush over here. I may have discovered something. Sid pulled out a folder from his desk. Spit it out, Beatrice snapped. We haven't got all day. Something unusual about Dr. Quinn, who works at Roosevelt Memorial Hospital, Sid revealed. Beatrice stared at Sid blankly. The name doesn't ring a bell. That's because it's not her real name, Sid replied. What's her real name? Jenny Monroe. Beatrice and Cheryl gasped. They ripped off their sunglasses at the same time. The surrogate? How did she get back to New York? Cheryl asked. That's not what's important to me or to you right now. What's dangerous is that she's here working at the same hospital where she delivered those 3 children. This could be a huge problem for us, Cheryl agreed. With that, Sid moved a photo across the desk of Quinn and her 2 children. Beatrice looked down at the photo. The boys look practically identical, Beatrice noted. It's almost uncanny how alike they are, Cheryl agreed. Beatrice thought back to the boy in the park, the brother and sister that had almost run straight into Beatrice and her mother Cheryl, the girl that looked just like the one next to Quinn in this photo now. Beatrice stared at Quinn in the photo. Her eyes widened at the realization. We have to keep the boys separate from one another, Beatrice demanded. And from Fred, Cheryl added. Beatrice stood up suddenly. Where are you going? Cheryl asked, but Beatrice was already out the door. Later that afternoon, Beatrice stood by the entrance of the school she saw Quinn and her children walk into earlier that day. She had to know. She had to know if her hunch was correct. She was early, and the kids had just been released for the day. She waited for Jake, that spoiled, rotten kid, to come out. Then she saw him by the entrance. Beatrice smiled at a passing teacher and entered the courtyard. No one stopped her. She came up behind Jake with slow and measured steps. Jake, she whispered. Jake Smith, what are you doing here? Jake froze. He turned to look up at her. Jake, come say hi to your mommy. Beatrice held out her hands towards Jake. Then he ran inside the school. Beatrice replaced her sunglasses and walked out of the grounds. She had a smile on her face. Later that night at the Smith mansion, Denny stared at the chalkboard in front of him full of numbers and equations. He followed the path of numbers to the end with his worn-down piece of chalk. Very good, Jake. Now we are on to the science portion of the class. Mrs. Robin, the teacher, pulled out a hefty science book to place on the desk. Denny hated Mrs. Robin. She was too strict and tapped him with her ruler whenever he slouched or got an answer wrong. He hadn't been outside at all today. He wanted their nanny, Nora, to make him his favorite snack. He wanted his mother, Quinn, to read to him. He even wanted his dumb sister, Sammy, here to annoy him all day. I hate science. Can we do something else? Now, come on, Jake. You're my best science student this year. We can go back over the previous assignment first. Denny sat down next to Mrs. Robin again until there was a knock at the door. Oh, Jake, my sweet boy. Beatrice held out her arms towards him. Jake looked up at Beatrice. Say hi to your mother now, Jake. Mrs. Robin tapped Jake on the shoulder with her ruler. Mind your manners. You're my mom? Beatrice took a calming breath. This kid was just as spoiled as Jake was, but she had to win him over if she was ever going to remain married to Fred, and more importantly, keep her money. Yes, it's me, darling. Come downstairs. I made dinner for us. You can cook? Beatrice forced a laugh. Of course not, dear. That's what Chef Julian is for. Beatrice took Denny by the arm and led him down the stairs. Denny did not like Jake's mom. She was not as pretty or as nice as his mom, Quinn. She wore weird clothes and too much makeup. But dinner with Beatrice was better than science class. Fred Smith was stunned when he walked into the dining room to find Beatrice and Denny waiting for him. A massive dinner spread out on the table. Are you okay that Beatrice is here, Jake? Denny looked at Beatrice, who hadn't stopped smiling at him since they sat down. I guess. Denny shrugged. He was just happy that he wasn't in science class anymore. How did you even get in here? Fred snapped at Beatrice. Beatrice rolled her eyes at Fred. I still have a key. Fred sat down and glared at Beatrice. You're not welcome here, or anywhere else around Jake. I made that very clear. Beatrice placed a hand on Denny's shoulder. Look, Fred, I've apologized to Jake. He's willing to give his mother another chance. You didn't apologize to me, Denny blurted out as Beatrice's grip on his shoulder tightened. Yes, I did, sweetie, but I can say it again. I'm so sorry. Beatrice forced a smile after she spoke. Okay, Denny agreed. Beatrice finally let go of him. Beatrice smiled at Fred. She knew Fred was confused by their son's behavior. The last time Beatrice had seen the child, he had been running away at the sight of her. Now he seemed indifferent to her. Beatrice was determined to work this in her favor to get Fred back. Fred's phone rang. I have to take this. Are you all right here by yourself for a moment, Jake? Denny nodded. Fred looked unsure, but stepped out of the room. Beatrice leaned down to whisper into Denny's ear when Fred left the room. I know who you are. Denny froze mid-bite. He looked at Beatrice in the eye. She held his eye contact. You don't know anything, Denny denied. I know you're not Jake Smith, Beatrice smirked. She had him. This little brat was posing as her snooty son Jake. His real name was Denny Murphy, and she was going to deliver him back home and bring Jake back to his real family. That would surely ensure that Fred would fall for Beatrice once again. There's no way Fred could divorce her if she brought back his beloved son to him safe and sound. Than before. Beatrice raised her hand. Then she thought better of it and took a step back, just as Fred ran into the room. What the your family? Even if your mother is difficult, she is your mother. She's not my real mom, Denny thought. My mom was nice and kind. Nothing like that mean witch. Denny knew at that moment that he was ready to go home. So later that night, Denny snuck downstairs and found a telephone in Fred's office. He dialed his home phone and crossed his fingers that since it was so late, no one would pick up except his younger sister, Sammy. Across town, Sammy sat in front of the TV with Jake Smith, who was still happily pretending to be her brother, Denny. Jake was, in fact, having the best night of his life. They watched late-night cartoons and shared a giant bowl of popcorn. He had never been allowed to stay up this late back home. Your mom lets you stay up this late past your bedtime? Only when I have nightmares. Do you have nightmares a lot? Sometimes, Sammy shrugged. Just then, the phone rang. Sammy stood up to answer it. Jake couldn't believe this either. He was never allowed to use or answer the phone at home either, especially if Beatrice was around, and she was always around, and always talking on the phone. Murphy residence, Sammy spoke into the phone like an adult. She motioned towards Jake with her free hand. Jake walked over to her. It's for you. Sammy handed him the phone. Jake stared at the phone. Who is it? Sammy shrugged. I don't know, but they're whispering, so I can't tell who it is. Okay. Jake took the phone from her. It's Beatrice, Jake thought. She's found me like she did at school. Hello? Jake held the phone against his ear. Jake, it's me, Denny. Denny? Jake whispered into the phone. He looked over to see if Sammy heard him, but she was back on the couch watching TV. She shoveled another handful of popcorn into her mouth. "What are you doing? You shouldn't call here." "I'm tired of being you. We gotta switch back." Jake felt frozen. He liked it at the Murphys, watching late-night cartoons with Sammy. He liked their kind nanny, Nora, and her cooking, even if she didn't know how to flip a pan or cut cucumbers really fast. Most of all, he liked Quinn. And he didn't want to give her up as his mom yet. Even if the mix-up was accidental, he wanted it to become permanent. "I'm sorry, I don't think I can do that," Jake mumbled, and he hung up the phone. "Who was that?" Sammy glared quizzically. "Wrong number," Jake covered quickly. "Huh." Sammy looked back at the TV, but Jake was worried that she didn't believe him. The following day, Quinn sat at her desk. She'd already cleaned the whole house and done all the laundry for the week. She'd even color-coordinated her closet. Her housekeeper, Nora, had left to go to the grocery store an hour ago, and Quinn had no one to talk to. She flipped through some old paperwork, but she still hated sitting still. Quinn's suspension was still in place after Fred Smith's bogus claims about her hurting his child. Quinn felt that he should be more worried about his own wife hurting his child. Quinn was professional. That child was afraid, but Jake Smith wasn't afraid of her. He was afraid of his own mom. The thought broke Quinn's heart in two. The phone rang. Quinn picked it up, grateful to have someone to talk to. "Hello? I have a gentleman here requesting a private consultation." A child's voice emerged on the other end of the line. Quinn tried not to laugh at the formality. "Denny? Is that you? You're supposed to be at school, young man." "My dad needs help." "Your dad? Who is this?" Quinn asked. The address. Once she was there, Quinn rang the doorbell to the giant mansion repeatedly. There was no time to waste, but no one seemed to be rushing to answer. The house was massive. It looked like a luxury Italian villa right on the edge of Central Park. She could see the kids' school from here. Well, at least she would be nearby for pickup later on. She checked her watch, and the school day was almost over. She hoped that this home call wouldn't take long. She beat on the door until a butler in full uniform answered. "May I help you?" the butler inquired in a clipped tone. "I received an urgent call from here. Someone needs medical assistance?" Quinn held up her doctor's bag and stethoscope. "No one is ill here, ma'am." "Well, I'd like to speak to the owner of the house then, to see that he's okay," Quinn insisted. "He's on an important call, miss. I can assure you that he is fine." Quinn pushed her way inside. The butler followed behind her. "Miss, I am going to have to call the police." "Do what you have to. I'm not letting someone die." She entered the massive living room area, and suddenly, Denny rushed out of the kitchen and into Quinn's arms. Quinn couldn't believe it. Jake Smith had called her. She looked up at the tall ceilings and luxurious interiors. Quinn knew that Fred Smith would not be happy that she was there, even if she was saving his life. Hey, Jake, are you okay? Is your dad okay?" Denny's shoulders fell. He couldn't believe it. What was happening? Just because he was in a fancy getup and a different house, his own mother didn't recognize him? was worried about you, not himself. Fred paused at this. His expression softened a bit. He looked down at Denny. Son, I'm fine. Why would you call Dr. Quinn over for me? Denny looked between the two of them, and then he took off as fast as his legs would carry him. He pushed past the butler and into Central Park. He wouldn't stay in that house any longer, waiting for that mean lady Beatrice to come back. He wouldn't. Denny could hardly breathe. He was running as fast as he could. He could hear his mom and Fred running. But we can't switch back now. If they see us together now, we're toast. Then they will make it about us and never end up together. We have to get them together first, while we're still in control. Just a few more days? Denny relented. Fine. Just then, they all turned around when... Jake? Jake? Where are you, Jake? Fred's worried voice entered the courtyard. Oh no, Jake cried. Denny, you need to get out of this place and fast, or else he's gonna see us. And with that, Denny took off, Fred hot on his coattails. Too late, here he comes, whispered Jake as he dove into the nearest bush, cutting his argument with Denny off just as it got heated. For Jake, switching places with Denny, his look-alike, had been a no-brainer. It got him away from his abusive mother. Life in Denny's home had been a vast improvement. For Denny, however, the deal wasn't as lucrative, and he wanted out. However, with Jake's father, Fred Smith, striding across the schoolyard to Denny, Jake hid, hoping to leave the matter in Fred's hands. Jake dove into the nearest bush as Fred saw Denny, and assuming Denny was Jake, grabbed him by the shoulders. Jake, meanwhile, felt a pang of guilt as he emerged from the bushes and watched his father walk away with Denny. He knew he shouldn't have run away and that Denny had wanted to switch back to his old life. And Jake did actually miss his father, Fred. But he couldn't. He just couldn't bring himself to go back home just yet. His newly acquired mother, Quinn, was just too wonderful to leave behind. Jake liked having a sister, too, and he absolutely loved going to a real school. But before he could dwell on his decision any longer, he was interrupted. Oh, Denny, there you are. I was just about to head to the school, sighed Quinn, running up to who she thought were Denny and Sammy, a bit out of breath. Sorry, Mom, began Jake. Sammy rolled her eyes, irritated that the dumb boys had just messed up the plan to switch them back to their rightful places. Jake just shrugged. He'd explain things to Sammy later. For now, he needed to go back to playing along. That was quite the ordeal, began Quinn. I'm not spending even one more minute thinking about that awful Fred Smith today. Let's forget about it and do something fun. How was school? Who wants ice cream? Yay, we do, cried the children, each holding one of Quinn's hands and skipping toward the ice cream truck up the path. Meanwhile, Beatrice was across town, leaving an exclusive spa dressed to the nines in a designer outfit that she knew would stop Fred dead in his tracks. She was going to go and make up with Fred. It was her last chance. This bratty kid was not going to come between Beatrice and her husband's millions. She simply wouldn't allow it. And if she had to get a complete makeover to entice Fred back, so what? He would be paying for that, just like he paid for everything else during their entire marriage. A marriage based on lies. And Beatrice had no time to waste. She needed to win Fred back before he realized her many deceptions and left her and her mother penniless. Beatrice had the limousine stop in front of the skyscraper housing the penthouse she and Fred had once called home. Why can't it just be Fred and me? She thought desperately. This kid, Jake, who was driving her bonkers, was the reason she had been able to entice Fred to marry her. Therefore, she would have to make an effort to get along with the boy. But he was such a nuisance and so badly behaved. Eventually, Beatrice planned to convince Fred to send the child away to military boarding school. But not yet. For now, she needed to save her marriage and protect her money, she thought, inhaling deeply as she looked up at the beautiful, clear sky. She was busy summoning every ounce of her strength until... Nice! Crowed a man riding past on a bicycle, noticing Beatrice's eye-catching attire and breaking her calm. Beatrice narrowed her eyes and shouted, "Get bent, creep!" You see, when it came down to it, Beatrice was just a regular New Yorker and not really high society at all. But it was time for her to assume her trophy wife's identity once more, if she hoped to keep it. Beatrice made sure her hat was fixed at the exact right angle and walked through the revolving doors with her head held high. "I'm sorry, ma'am," interrupted the security guard behind the desk when he saw Beatrice approach the elevators. "I'll need you to wait here. I've been given strict orders not to admit you to the penthouse anymore." Beatrice's mouth fell open wide. "What?" she yelled. "That's preposterous. Do you know who I am?" Beatrice felt that maybe if she caused enough of a scene, the guard would relent, just so that the others in the lobby wouldn't be disturbed. Beatrice didn't care about saving face right now. All she cared about was getting back together with Fred. "Yes, ma'am," answered the guard. "I am Mrs. Fred Smith. He's the CEO of RexCorp, and I'll have your badge for this. Let me up to my home this instant." The security guard froze. If he let the woman up, Fred Smith would have him fired for sure. If he didn't let the woman up, she would likely also have him fired. These rich people, he thought. They think they can have whatever they want, whenever they want. "Mrs. Smith," began the guard, "I'm terribly sorry. Let me call upstairs for you. I'm sure we can work something." The guard stopped mid-sentence as Beatrice had just stomped away toward the elevator. He watched the edge of her houndstooth cape flutter as she rounded the corner out of sight. He sighed. This was not going to end well, no matter what he did next. Fred and Denny were watching Chef Julian masterfully flip crepes into the air. It wasn't breakfast time, but it didn't have to be. Crepes were the best comfort food ever, no matter what time of day it was. And Fred knew how much his son loved them. So asked Chef Julian to whip some up in their world-class kitchen. Denny whooped and laughed as the crepes flew up in the air, and Fred tousled the boy's hair, so happy to have him back. "Jake," began Fred, "I've been thinking. Things have been kind of crazy around here for the last few days. Maybe we should get away for a few days. What do you think, kiddo? Just you and your old dad? Maybe we just need to have some fun. You pick a spot. Me? Anywhere, really? Asked Denny. Anywhere you want, sport, said Fred. Denny's eyes grew animated. Oh, can we get one of those space rockets and see outer space? Fred laughed. I meant anywhere in the world, son. Maybe you can see space when you're grown up. But let's keep the fun on Earth for now, huh? Okay, what about, began Denny, wondering if maybe Fred would take him back to London to see his friends there. Until very recently, that's where Denny, his mother, his sister Sammy, and Nora the nanny had lived. He'd grown up there, and he missed the London eye, peering down over the city no matter the weather, the fish and chips, and the London buses, and so many other things that had made the city home. New York City was really something, but he wasn't used to it yet. However, just as Denny got up the nerve to ask Fred to take him to London, he heard a commotion. Fred heard the commotion too and steeled himself. He'd known that this would happen at some point. He knew Beatrice would try to come home and pretend that nothing was wrong. She'd pretend that she hadn't ever hit Jake. She'd claim that she loved both of them. This time, however, Fred was finished with it, and finished with Beatrice. He'd had the locks to the penthouse changed. Chef Julian, said Fred, please continue with the crepes. I'll be back shortly to eat mine with my son. There's just something I need to take care of first. Jake, be a good boy and stay here for a bit, okay? You can start on your crepes without me and think about where you might like to go on our special trip. Okay, Dad, Denny replied dutifully. Chef Julian nodded and poured more batter onto the crepe pan. Petit monsieur, watch. Maybe I can teach you how to flip one, he said, winking at the boy's father as Fred left the room. Cool! Yes, please! Fred heard his son yell excitedly as he left the massive kitchen on his way to the front door. Before he got to the front door, Fred took out his phone and dialed the security desk. I know, sir, answered the flustered security guard who had been expecting this call ever since Beatrice marched straight past him onto the elevator, despite not being allowed to enter the building anymore on Fred's orders. I'm on it, Mr. Smith, said the guard. Terribly sorry, sir. Handle it, spat Fred, before hanging up on the guard before he could even finish apologizing. Fred opened the door and saw Beatrice standing there. She did look magnificent. Clearly, she had gone shopping and to the spa, all at his expense, no doubt. The thought of this made Fred even angrier. You shouldn't be here, Beatrice. Fred, darling, she purred, pretending nothing was wrong. You didn't even notice my new outfit. I'm hurt. Oh, and you simply must call a locksmith. There's something wrong with the door. I already called the locksmith, dear. They changed the locks, just as I asked them to. None of your keys work anymore because this is no longer your home. Your things are being packed, and they will be sent to the address of your choice. You can't stay at the Four Seasons anymore. What? Beatrice was completely taken aback by Fred's newfound boldness. Well, I should explain. Fred folded his arms in front of him. You can certainly stay at the Four Seasons if you want to. But I will not be paying for it anymore. You'll either be paying for it yourself, or you'll be checking out tomorrow morning. Oh, and I've canceled your credit cards, too. The edge of Beatrice's mouth twitched with anger. At least she'd been to the spa and the boutique before he'd cut her off, she thought bitterly. But Fred... But Fred nothing, he answered matter-of-factly. This relationship is over. You'll direct any inquiries to Malley Martinson Sneed, my law firm of record. Beatrice sneered. Malley Martinson Sneed. Only the best for you, Fred, even when you're choosing divorce attorneys. Beatrice realized as soon as that left her mouth, that she'd said it out loud. This kind of talk would not help her get Fred back. Beatrice dug deep within herself and started to cry big fake tears, not caring that her eye makeup was running and that she would look like a raccoon. "Fred, please," she began. "I love you. I love Jake. I don't want this divorce. I was there for you, Fred. I waited 3 long years at your bedside for you to recover from your coma. Is that worth nothing to you?" "Save it, Beatrice," he answered flatly as Max, the bodyguard, appeared in the doorway behind Fred, and a throng of security guards emptied into the hallway from the elevator. "You're The number you have dialed is not in service," droned the computerized voice over and over. The blood drained from Beatrice's face. Why would her mother's phone number be disconnected? Before Beatrice could respond, Fred snatched his phone back from her, and the security guards closed in around Beatrice. "Please, show Miss Sinclair out," he directed them, notably using Beatrice's maiden name now. No, wait!" wailed Beatrice as the guards dragged her toward the elevator. "You'll be sorry," yelled Beatrice Smith as the building security team carried her away onto the elevator. But Fred just smiled and shook his head, watching the spectacle with a combination of sadness and delight as he had his now estranged wife physically ejected from the building. She'd tried to get back in, but after it had been revealed just how terribly she had acted toward their son, Jake, Fred could not allow her around the boy any longer. One thing he did know was that their divorce would be ugly. He was fighting for the boy. She was fighting for money and her material survival. But that was a problem for another day. Fred thanked his bodyguard, Max, who had handled Beatrice's removal, and went back into the kitchen. There, he found Denny, posing as his son Jake, standing over the stove on a step stool. Chef Julian stood behind the boy, his large hands covering Denny's small ones as they held the crepe pan together. "Look what Chef Julian taught me," said the child, gleefully, as he and Chef Julian together flipped the crepe up in the air and caught it again in the pan. "Wow, that's amazing!" Fred applauded his son and laughed. "I'm glad Chef is holding your hands. Might be a little dangerous to flip by yourself yet, okay?" "I'm going to flip them way up in the air someday," said Denny, excited, and also sure that his mother, Quinn, would never allow him to be flipping crepes with a hot pan. "I'm sure you will, buddy," answered Fred. "What was going on in the hall?" asked the boy. "Did I hear—" "Yes, son. Beatrice doesn't live here anymore. I've sent her away. You explained how mean she was being to you, and I believe you. She won't be allowed to do that to you ever again." Denny's mouth fell open. "Do you mean it?" His mind was racing. Beatrice being out of the picture meant that he and Jake could switch back, and Denny could go home to Quinn, his real mother. Jake could come back here, and not have to worry about that mean lady anymore. Sure, I mean it, confirmed Fred. Nothing in this world is more important to me than you, Jake. Not one thing. Denny's eyes got a bit teary. He could tell that this man loved Jake a whole lot and decided that maybe it was time for the boys to switch back. He missed his mother. He missed Sammy and Nora, the nanny. And he even missed school. He didn't like having just one teacher and having classes at their house. He wanted to be in a place with lots of other kids, making new friends and learning. Creams in the park and made their way back home for the evening. But much as Quinn loved having extra time with the children, she was feeling very anxious about her job. That CEO, Fred Smith, was one of the main donors to the hospital, and he certainly had it out for Quinn. It was ridiculous. Quinn closed her eyes for a moment, trying to shut out the frustration. "What's the matter, Mommy?" asked Sammy. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetie," Quinn said, brushing her daughter's hair out of her eyes. Quinn couldn't tell the children just yet. She knew she had to get her job back first. She had struggled to put herself through medical school while raising 2 small babies. Then she worked as a neurosurgeon at one of England's top hospitals. It was this prestigious position she had left to return to the United States in search of the son who had been taken from her on the day he and her other 2 children were born. It had been a big upheaval for her kids, and she needed to keep things calm. Thankfully, just then, Nora appeared in the room and welcomed them back home. She could immediately tell that something wasn't right and came to Quinn's rescue. "Okay, you 2, began Nora to the children. "Go upstairs and wash your hands, and then we can bake some cookies. Would you like that?" "Ah, yeah!" The 2 children sped up the stairs as fast as their little legs could carry them. Once the children were out of sight, Nora confronted Quinn. "I know you pretty well, you know," began Nora. Dodged Quinn. "Even when you were a little girl, you got that same look on your face and chewed your lip in that same way when something was bothering you." "What's going on?" asked the nanny with love in her voice. "Does this have anything to do with why you haven't been at your new job for a couple of days now?" Quinn exhaled, hung up her purse and her coat, and plopped down on the couch, covering her face with her hands. Nora did know her well. Nora wasn't just the children's nanny. She had also been Quinn's nanny years ago. After everything her family had been through, Quinn was thankful to have this kind, older woman, whom she loved very much, as an important part of the family. "Nora, it's hopeless," cried Quinn. "What do you mean?" asked Nora. "I'm suspended without pay." "No!" said Nora with disbelief. "How could that happen? You only just started the job. What will we do?" "It's stupid," said Quinn. "Some hospital donor has it out for me, that's all. Even Dr. Crawford admitted I didn't do anything wrong." "I wouldn't think so. You're a fabulous doctor. They'll realize that too. They must. What's happening to me has nothing to do with how good of a doctor I am. This is one guy with a chip on his shoulder who is trying to stick it to me, grumbled Quinn. I thought you said your boss was nice, Nora asked, confused for a moment. Dr. Crawford is great, but he can't override the hospital board no matter what he says. His hands are tied. It's just this one man, this Fred Smith, you know? The CEO of RexCorp. That's a difficult spot to be in for sure, Nora answered, placing a caring hand on Quinn's shoulder. I can't tell the kids just yet. Not until I get my job back. I think I will, right? You're sure to get it back if you haven't done anything wrong, said Nora. Think of it as a vacation. In fact, why don't we all go somewhere to take our minds off it for a while? That's actually a great idea, said Quinn, her mind now swirling with ideas. His father was busy in the office. He then slipped into his father's room to answer the call. Sammy? Denny spoke into the phone just as Chef Julian disconnected downstairs. No, it's me, Jake. The phone on the other end corrected, a hint of amusement in his tone. You know, the guy you're pretending to be? Denny brightened. Oh, Jake! Good, you called. There's a lot you need to know. Not sure how you'll take it, but I think you'll be pleased. Jake's voice dropped to a whisper. What happened? Tell me everything. Denny paused for a moment before answering. Your dad threw your mom out, so it's safe for you to come back home now. Really? Like, really? For real? Did he throw her out for good? Asked Jake, incredulous. It was more like the security guards who actually threw her out, but yeah, your dad's sending all her stuff to her. He changed the locks and everything, so we can switch back. I don't know how we do that, though. Your dad is taking me to Dragon World on a special trip. Oh, wow! My dad's so cool. I want to go to Dragon World, crowed Jake. Yeah, he actually really is, man, said Denny. But hey, I was thinking in order to switch back, maybe you should get my mom to take you and Sammy to Dragon World too. I heard Lance tell my dad the plan. We're staying in room 8808 of the Fairy Forest Resort. Oh boy, Sammy will love the Fairest Fairy Resort, said Jake, as Sammy's eyes grew wide. Okay, we'll work on it. Okay, shoot, your dad's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Dragon World, Fairy Forest Resort, room 8808. And with that, Denny hung up the phone. Over at the Murphys' house, Jake relayed everything he'd just heard to Sammy, concluding firmly, we need to convince your mom to take us to Dragon World. It's our best chance. I have always wanted to go to Dragon World, screeched Sammy excitedly. Just then, Quinn appeared in the doorway. Did you say something about Dragon World? She asked the children, who stood in surprised silence, unsure of how much Quinn had heard. Yes? Stammered Sammy, casually hiding the phone behind her back. What are you doing with the phone, silly? Asked Quinn. She was gonna call Dragon World to see if they're open this week, suggested Jake, covering for Sammy. Well, guess what? Said Quinn. You're in luck. Nora said that maybe we should go away for a few days and have some fun. I agree with her. What do you think, kids? Is Dragon World the place you want to go? Yay! The children yelled, both grabbing Quinn around her legs. Can we stay in the Fairy Forest Resort? I hear it's great, pleaded Sammy, her cheeks turning hot and red. Quinn took out her cell phone and said into it, Call Fairy Forest Resort, Dragon World. The phone immediately dialed the number as Sammy and Jake jumped up and down excitedly, hugging each other and whooping. Do you have any availability tomorrow afternoon? I know it's soon. A suite? That sounds expensive, said Quinn into the phone. don't you have anything else? Anything maybe a bit less fancy? Oh, I see. Well, I'll book it then. Yes, 1 second. Quinn got out her credit card and began reading off the numbers. This trip would be expensive. But Quinn realized that her children would only be young once, and it wouldn't be long until she was back at the hospital and too busy to go. She needed to make the very most of this time, suspension or not. The next day, after a 4-hour drive, Quinn and her family checked into their suite at the Fairy Forest Resort. Sammy and Jake were practically bursting with excitement as Quinn stood there, juggling hotel paperwork, her purse, and the room keys. The door right across the hall opened, and its occupants emerged. Quinn couldn't believe her eyes.
"What on earth are you doing here?" Fred Smith asked. Standing across the hall from him was the last woman Fred Smith ever wanted to see again, especially at the Fairy Forest Resort Hotel, where Fred had specifically gone with his son to take him to the theme park Dragon World. Dr. Quinn Murphy looked up into the eyes of a fuming Fred Smith. She clutched the hotel paperwork, medical bag, and suitcases to her chest. Her 2 children stood around and giggled. What they didn't know was that the 2 boys, Jake Smith and Denny Murphy, had switched places, and that this was their plan to finally switch back now that Fred had finally banished Jake's evil mom Beatrice from their home for good. All 3 of Quinn's children had plotted a master plan to bring their families back together by forcing Fred and Quinn to the same theme park getaway. They were convinced that their parents were perfect for each other and should get married. Unfortunately, Quinn and Fred could not stand each other. "I'm on vacation with my kids. What are you doing here?" Quinn asked. "The same thing." "Mom, can we go now? I want to ride the roller coaster." Jake Smith, pretending to be Denny Murphy, tugged on her shirt. "Okay, sweetie, 1 moment." Quinn pushed the door open to let Jake and Sammy inside. "I want to ride the roller coaster too," Denny Murphy, pretending to be Jake Smith, whispered to Fred. "We will, kiddo. We will ride as many times as you want." Fred and Quinn glared at each other. "Let's just agree to stay out of one another's way," Quinn yelled to him across the hall. "Fine, as long as you stay away from my son," Fred agreed. He pushed Denny inside the room and slammed the door shut behind him. Later that day, Quinn stood with Sammy and Jake in the line for the biggest roller coaster in the park, Dragon's Breath, a giant looping coaster that spewed fake fire when it accelerated. Sammy leaned against Quinn. They were both exhausted from walking around the park all day. They'd run across goblins, warlocks, and damsels in distress in the park already. Sammy was now dressed as a knight, and Jake was in a wizard cape. They'd had enough witch's stew at lunch that Sammy was about to fall asleep standing up. "Do we have to ride the coaster again, Denny?" Sammy asked. Jake crossed his arms and looked over at her. "Duh, we have to ride it. It's the main attraction at Dragon World." Sammy huddled close to Quinn when the coaster made another giant loop above their heads, full of screams. "I don't know. It looks really scary," Sammy whispered. "That's the whole point." Jake jumped up and down so that his cape flew behind him like he was flying. Quinn squeezed Sammy's hand. "You don't have to go on if you don't want to, sweetie." But just then, the family was interrupted. "Oh, look who we have here," Fred hissed from behind Quinn. Quinn squeezed her eyes shut and took a deep breath. "Hello, Fred," Quinn forced out. She looked down at the boy she thought was his son. "Hi," Denny, masquerading as Jake, mumbled. The real Jake waved at him from behind Quinn. Denny waved back. They both wore matching wizard capes and gave each other the thumbs up. Switching back was going to be a piece of cake, Denny thought. He couldn't wait to be back with his mom and his annoying sister, Sammy. "Are you excited about the ride, Jake?" Quinn asked. "Don't speak to him," Fred told Quinn. Quinn rolled her eyes. They moved forward in the long, twisting line slowly. Quinn was determined not to speak to Fred, but she also couldn't help but notice how alike Denny and Jake looked. It was hard not to stare at both of them, especially in those capes. When they reached the front of the line, Sammy motioned the boys forward towards the front of the coaster, a 3-seater row. The head of the coaster was the head of the dragon with fiery red eyes and a gaping mouth, ready to shoot fire across the land of Dragon World. "We should all sit together," Sammy pointed towards the front. "Oh, I thought you were scared," Jake taunted. Sammy shoved him and Jake almost shoved back before Denny intervened. "Hey, don't be mean to my sister," Denny elbowed Jake. "She's my sister too," Jake retorted. "Shut up, you're both being dumb," Sammy snapped. The boys both looked at her. "If we sit together, then they have to sit together." Sammy motioned to Quinn and Fred, who were standing with their arms crossed and not speaking to one another in line. "You're the smartest kid sister ever," Denny fist bumped Sammy. "Hey, I'm your only kid sister," Sammy retorted. "Yeah, but the best." Jake fist bumped Sammy too. Just then, a ride conductor in a wizard outfit motioned the 3 children forward with a wand. "Step right up, kids, for the most magical ride of your life." Sammy, Jake, and Denny scurried forward and onto the front seats of the ride. They pulled the safety belt down over their laps. "Sammy, are you okay up there?" Quinn called from the back. "I'm okay, Mom," Sammy yelled in reply. "Are you sure? You don't have to ride with the boys if you don't want to." "I'm okay, Mom," Sammy confirmed again. Quinn tried to step forward, but Fred shot his arm out in front of her. "Let her be, Quinn. She wants to hang with the boys." "I know my own daughter," Quinn glared. "She didn't want to go on the ride earlier." Then they heard a scream from Sammy that stopped Quinn in her tracks and her fight with Fred from escalating further. Quinn and Fred looked at each other. In an instant, Quinn tried to leave her seat to get to the children, but the crowd was too dense. Fred grabbed a hold of her shoulder. "It's fine. They're just playing about. You're not going to make it to the front." "Don't tell me what to do," Quinn retorted. She hated how childish she sounded. It may have been slightly irrational, but Quinn knew Sammy's fears all too well, since she was also scared of roller coasters, even though she didn't like to admit it. Fred fought the urge to roll his eyes at her. He knew that if Jake were in trouble, he'd be doing the same thing, but he'd seen Sammy run to the front seats with the boys. She was having the time of her life with them. It was like they were all siblings. It was strange, Fred thought, how alike Denny and Jake were. "All aboard, folks! This dragon leaves any second," the conductor said. Just then, Sammy screamed again, but this time, the scream soon turned into a giggle, followed by shouts from the boys. Quinn relaxed as the safety bars came down over everyone's laps with a mechanical churn. The coaster came to life with a dragon's roar and rumble that shook the whole coaster. "See, she's fine. They're having fun," Fred said, hoping to allay Quinn's fears. Quinn nodded and tried to breathe while the coaster crept slowly up the track toward the top of a very high first drop. Quinn squeezed her eyes shut. "What? Scared of heights?" Fred taunted beside her while the coaster climbed higher and higher until the peak spread out in front of them. The other rides and coasters looked tiny in comparison to Dragon's Breath. Quinn thought she might pass out. "Actually, I am." Fred's hand on hers forced her eyes open. He held her hand and yelled over the sound of the coaster and the dragon's roar. "Keep your eyes open and let your body relax, or else you'll get sick." Quinn wanted to argue with him, but she was afraid she would throw up if she opened her mouth. Fred gave her hand another reassuring squeeze as the coaster tilted over the first massive drop, and Dragon's fire spewed from the front seat. She held onto his hand and kept her eyes open as the coaster dropped. The kids ran off in front of Quinn and Fred after the ride ended. They are definitely gonna get married. Jake high-fived Denny. Yeah, we just need to switch back, Denny told Jake and Sammy. Let's go on another ride. Then I'll say we have to go to the bathroom and then we can switch, Jake whispered. Good idea. They won't notice a difference with the capes. We just gotta switch our shirts. Denny motioned toward their matching capes. The boys jumped apart when Quinn and Fred approached. Come on, kids. That's enough fun for one day. Quinn waved them towards the exit. But we want to ride again, Jake whined. Tomorrow, I'm worn out, Quinn said. And you two need a bath. Stat. Quinn grabbed a hold of Jake and Sammy's shirts playfully to drag them towards the exit. Say, how about another ride, kiddo? Fred asked Denny, thinking he was Jake. I don't know, Denny shrugged. I'm kind of tired. Fred knelt down in front of Denny and gave his shoulders a squeeze. Oh, come on. One more ride, please, for your dad. We never get to hang out, just us. Okay, Denny agreed. Within a moment, the boys' plans had been ruined. Denny waved to Jake and Sammy, Quinn too. But right before she turned to leave, Denny, as Jake, rushed forward and gave Quinn a big hug. Fred wanted to be mad at Quinn for showing up on his vacation, but seeing how happy Jake was to see her versus how scared he'd been the last time he saw Beatrice, Fred felt himself softening towards Quinn. He also couldn't stop thinking about how nice it had been to hold her hand. Back in the hotel suite, Quinn ran a bath for Sammy and the boy she thought was Denny before she tucked them into bed. After her own shower, Quinn sat on the bed drying her hair with a towel when the hotel phone rang. Quinn rushed over to answer it before it woke up the kids. The front desk insisted that there was a medical emergency across the hall, in Fred's room, but Quinn knew it had to be his son Jake pulling another prank. Still, Quinn knew her duty as a doctor and took her medical bag across the hall. She had to stop herself from laughing when she knocked on the door. Quinn couldn't believe what a prankster Jake turned out to be, especially since Fred seemed so uptight. She wondered where Jake had got his good humor from because it certainly was not his hateful mother Beatrice either. Quinn could picture Fred's furious face when he saw her standing there, but she had to be sure that Jake and Fred were all right. Since when do I care about Fred Smith's well-being? Quinn asked herself. But when the door opened, her mind went completely blank as she took in the sight of Fred, soaking wet, with only a towel around his waist. Quinn, can I help you? Fred seemed more surprised than angry, which also threw Quinn off her game, along with Fred being shirtless. She was speechless. In fact, she was certain that her brain had completely turned off at this point. Fred Smith was much more handsome than she remembered from a few hours ago, especially without a shirt on. Be professional, Quinn thought, forcing herself to speak in a casual tone. I was called to help a patient. Fred rolled his eyes. Not this again. I know. Jake is such a prankster, but I promise you, I was called by a person at the front desk. Quinn insisted with her hands raised in innocence. Fred nodded and opened the door wider for her to enter. Jake was sad to leave you guys at the park today. I'm not surprised that he pulled another prank on us. Quinn shook her head. She couldn't be mad at Jake. He reminded her too much of Denny. Well, obviously we've been duped again. Perhaps he's the one obsessed with me, Quinn laughed. You're certainly more liked by Jake than Beatrice, that's for sure. She took long inhales and exhales. She was determined not to let Fred know that him shirtless sent her spinning out into fantasyland. Or how much it warmed her heart knowing that Jake wanted to see her again today. Jake? Jake, joke's over, son. Fred yelled his son's name and walked around the hotel suite, but he was nowhere to be seen. Fred turned back to Quinn, but she shook her head. Quinn looked out into the hallway, but Jake wasn't there either. She closed the door behind her. Very funny, Jake. You can come out now. Fred pushed open the closet door, but there was just empty hangers and their suitcases. I'm here, Jake. You can come out now. We can watch a movie if you want. Quinn leaned over and checked under the queen-sized beds, but both were empty underneath. Fred ran around the room and into the bathroom and out again. He was too frantic to even get dressed. Jake? Fred yelled. He opened the hotel room door and looked down the hallway, but it was empty. Fred looked back to Quinn with panic in his eyes. He's gone. Quinn, Jake's gone. Fred Smith yelled as he ran across the room, pulling out articles of clothing and rushing into the bathroom to put them on. Okay, when do you think he slipped out of the room to go downstairs and make a phone call from the front desk? Dr. Quinn Murphy asked. She had been summoned to Fred's room for medical assistance, and they both assumed that Jake had made this phone call from the front desk as a practical joke. But now, they didn't know where Jake was. It'd have to have been just now when I was in the shower. Fred exited the bathroom fully dressed. He paced around the room. I'm calling the police. Quinn pulled out her phone. She walked to the front door of the penthouse, but just as she was about to open the door, Fred grabbed her by the arm. He was breathing heavily. He's scared, Quinn thought, and she realized that she had never seen powerful CEO of RexCorp Fred Smith scared. He always seemed absolutely fearless to her, and now she felt like Fred was the one on the roller coaster who needed someone to hold his hand. Quinn realized in that moment that she wanted to be the one to hold it, just like he had done for her on Dragon's Breath today, and that ridiculous 500-foot drop. It's probably best that I call. Fred took the phone from her. Quinn held up her medical bag to put some distance between the two of them. She felt her stomach drop like it had on the roller coaster when he turned away from her. Just then, there was a bang on the hotel room door, and Fred hung up the phone. Fred reached for the door, hoping that Jake must have lost his key or forgotten it when he went down to the lobby to call Quinn over to their room. What a silly kid. Jake, is that you? Fred yelled through the door. Instead, Beatrice Smith, Fred's estranged wife, yelled back. Fred, it's me. Fred, please, open up. We need to talk. Please give me another chance. Beatrice? What the hell are you doing here? Called Fred angrily through the door. Lance told me you'd gone to Dragon World, and I had to find you. Please, Fred, open the door. Fred was so furious that he couldn't even speak. Quinn could hear Beatrice's dramatic sobbing through the door. Would that be Beatrice, Jake's beloved mother? Quinn asked. Fred rolled his eyes. He wanted to punch a wall. How could Lance have told Beatrice where they were? Fred, please, Beatrice wailed. We need to talk. Or at least, can you please just give me back my Amex? You can't just do this to me, Fred. I have rights. I have it. I don't have time for this right now, Fred yelled back. I have other more important things to deal with. But Beatrice banged on the door over and over again as Quinn covered her mouth and tried not to laugh. Fred shook his head and looked back down at Quinn's cell phone. He dialed a number quickly. Parker, look, we're at Dragon World. I need you to come and get your sister right now. Take the RexCorp jet if you have to, and clear it with Lance. Beatrice is causing a scene outside my suite at the Fairy Forest. And if you see Jake while you're here, please, call me immediately. Okay, Parker? Please. Fred hung up the phone and tossed it aside. Beatrice continued to beat on the door and wailed. Fred, please, let us be a family again, please, Beatrice cried. Fred ran a hand down his face, exhausted from all this drama. But he knew that he needed to get rid of Beatrice, quickly. Jake would never come back to the room if he saw Beatrice outside. In a moment of frantic urgency, Fred leaned closer to Quinn. This is going to sound insane, but could you act like we're on a date in here? Excuse me? Quinn tried to walk away from Fred, but he yanked her wrist. Come on. If Beatrice thinks I've moved on, she will leave right now without a fight and stay away from Jake. I know her. Please, just help me out. Quinn paused. Fred did have a point, and she could see from the look in his eyes that he was desperate to get Jake's evil mom away from here so that he could find his son. I know you hate Beatrice as much as I do, Fred insisted. Fine, but I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for Jake. Quinn relented. What a nice dinner we had tonight, Fred yelled behind the door. Quinn stepped closer to him and shouted, Yeah, such a romantic place you took me to, Fred. Dragon World. I've always wanted to come here. They waited. Beatrice wailed. Fred? What's going on? Is there a woman in there with you? Fred nodded at Quinn, urging her on. Quinn yelled a little louder. So romantic, Fred. I cannot wait for another date with you. Beatrice wailed in response. Great. Could you laugh for me like you did before? Fred whispered. Beatrice never laughs, on principle. It will drive her crazy. Quinn had to agree. She had never seen Beatrice smile before. She wasn't sure Beatrice even knew how to smile. Quinn let out a small fake giggle. Fred laughed loudly in response at how fake she sounded. Quinn glared at him. Fred forced himself to take a deep breath. Sorry, but is that all you got? I know you have a big cackle when your kids are around. Well, sorry. It's a little hard to laugh on cue, Quinn snapped back at him. Fred leaned down and tickled her. Quinn tried not to laugh, but she was incredibly ticklish. A few high-pitched giggles escaped from her lips. Beatrice screamed through the door. Right! Who is she? Fred motioned upward with his hands. Come on, a little louder. I will. Just stop tickling me. I'm going to pee myself. Quinn forced it out. Fred chuckled again, and this time, Quinn smiled at him. A genuine smile. Quinn took a long breath in and out. She looked up into Fred's eyes. This feels so normal. It's nice to be with him, Quinn thought.
Quinn couldn't believe she was enjoying Fred's company. Not long ago, they were at each other's throats, locked in a bitter feud. Now, it felt like they'd known each other for decades, a comfortable ease settling between them. Was this fate? Were their children somehow orchestrating this unlikely alliance, pushing their parents towards each other? How would Beatrice react to this unexpected camaraderie? And what secrets did they both still hold? Would they ever truly know the real Fred Smith, the man beneath the ruthless CEO facade? And would he ever truly see her, Quinn Murphy, as anything more than a convenient ally in his war with his ex-wife?
Hey, I'm Jenny. If you're wondering what happens next, download the Pocket FM app now and listen to the exciting episodes of A Mother's Battle.